Good day, grade 12 learners. And if you are grade 10 and 11, you are welcome too. Welcome to today's English First Additional Language lesson. My name is Marina Seeley, and I'm here with my funky friend, Sikpateretebe, and this lesson is brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with the Sibono Discovery Center.
Kindly note that we do have a WhatsApp interactive number, and the number is 064 748 8913. You are all welcome to pose any question that you would love to. Allow me to repeat the number again: 064 748 8913.
In today's lesson, we are going to focus on paper 3, which is the creative writing paper, and our closer focus will be on the essay. And we are going to look at what makes an essay good.
Right. At the end of this lesson, these are the things that you need to be in the know of. The first one is the requirements of paper 3. What is it that is required of you for you to have a good paper 3? The next thing is what makes a good essay. We all want to write a good piece.
For sure.
So, what makes a good essay? Then choosing a topic. This is very important because many a times we are not sure of what topic to choose. And because of that, we end up making mistakes.
And then the essay is not so good.
Yes. And what about brainstorming and planning? Remember, before you can even start to write any essay, you need to brainstorm on the topic or any subject for that matter. And then you need to plan as well. After you have done that, you need to come up with a striking introduction.
A hook.
Exactly. Constructing the content as well. It's very, very important. Writing an effective conclusion.
Full circle.
Yes. At the end of it, you need to conclude your piece. Proofreading as well as editing.
We will tell you what that is all about.
I hope you're looking forward to that. And then the final presentation.
Before we start, I have a number of questions for you. Don't worry, they're not difficult. My first question is, do you like writing essays?
Oh, no.
And very often there are some people who love it and other people who don't.
Yes.
But to find out why you like or don't like writing an essay, you must ask yourself, what do you find easy about the process? And then the flip side, what do you find difficult about the process? Do you feel comfortable with a specific type of essay? And we will refer to that shortly. So let's take a look at what makes an essay good.
Yes.
Your success in this paper depends on the following.
Wow. The first thing is your choice of topic. You need to select a topic that is right for you.
Indeed.
What do you mean by the topic being right for you, Marina?
If you take an interest in something specific, then obviously you would want to write about it. You will have vocabulary.
Yes.
You will have the jargon, and jargon refers to the language of that specific area. For example, I love sport, but I'm no sportsman. I can't remember the last time I actually participated in any kind of sport. I can actually watch sport as a spectator. So I would not be able to write about positions on the field or the format or the types of things that you do, but I can describe it. I can describe the spectators and the amazing festive atmosphere that is created at a sporting event. So you need a topic that is right for
For
you.
you. So you need to relate to the topic. It has to be something that you can talk about.
Indeed. So that asks prior knowledge. It also asks for vocabulary, choice of words. Very, very important
Very
indeed.
important, yes. Proper planning as well.
Oh, that is the bane of our existence. Because learners seem to think that planning is to make the teacher happy. It's not. If you don't plan your essay properly, you are most probably going to have a lot of repetition.
Mm-hmm.
And it might end up being boring.
Yes.
And we don't want that.
A striking introduction.
Hooking the reader.
Yes. An interesting content.
That's where the planning comes in.
Effective use of words, sentences, as well as punctuation.
Indeed.
And a striking conclusion.
We want things full circle.
Yes.
Before we get started, I have a couple of questions for you. If you are a grade 12 learner or even a grade 11 learner, there are certain conventions, certain things that you've already learned about writing an essay. And I'm going to quickly ask you a couple of questions. Question 1. Name the 5 different types of essays. Don't worry, you don't have to write this down. I am going to give you some time to quickly jot down your thoughts, and I'll keep the questions on display. The second one, how many words should your essay be? That refers to the length, of course. What does it mean to brainstorm and plan your essay? What is the purpose of the introduction? Is there a limit to the number of paragraphs that you write? And what is the golden rule of an effective conclusion? What is meant by proofreading and editing? And what's the difference between a first draft and a final presentation? Let's just back up there. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to quickly write down or respond to these questions. 2 minutes, and then we'll be back. We're back.
Yes, welcome back. I hope you really enjoyed the activities. Let's have a look at the solutions then. These are the 5 top essays that we have. We've got the narrative essay. We also have the descriptive essay, the argumentative essay, yes, the discursive essay, and lastly, the reflective essay.
Don't worry, we'll explain all of them a little later.
And what about the length that is required? In grade 12, your essay should be 2050 to 300 words.
So 250 to 300.
Yes.
But what about grade 11?
Grade 11 is 200 words to 250 words.
And for those grade 10s that are watching, 150 to 200 words.
Yes. Brainstorming and planning, what does that mean?
Write down your thoughts and ideas on a specific topic and arranging them in different paragraphs.
We spoke much about the introduction. And what did we say? The introduction should hook the reader and create interest to read on. There's no rule about the number of paragraphs, but usually we do have 3 to 4 ideas that are enough to develop a good essay.
Indeed.
An effective conclusion brings the essay a full circle. Proofreading. I know you love proofreading, Maria.
I do.
And what is proofreading?
You read the essay making sure that the meaning is clear and that you kept to the number of words and the topic. Editing, on the other hand, refers to correcting any grammar mistakes such as spelling, tenses, punctuation, capitalization errors, and words used wrongly.
The first draft is part of planning. You correct all mistakes before writing the final essay, which should be error-free.
So they should be different. The first draft and the final can't look the same. Then there's no reason to write the final one. So make sure that if you do write a first draft, that all your editing happens there.
Yes.
And that your final presentation, remember, not second draft, final is basically without any errors.
Right, let's have a look at the terminology. You remember we spoke about types of essays. The first one is the narrative essay, which is a story. I would love to believe that each and every one of you, at some stage, you found yourself having to tell a story. And you did that beautifully so. So, a narrative essay is a piece of writing that recreates an experience through time.
Once upon a time, and we need characters.
Yes.
And we need a problem. And then we need some conflict because nothing happens otherwise. And then it has to come to a point, like a climax, where something has to happen. And then the problem is solved. And they lived happily ever after. It doesn't necessarily have to end like that, but that is the basic format for a perfect narrative essay.
Also, remember that a narrative essay can be based on own experience, past or present, or it can be based on experience of someone else, or it can be fictional.
Creativity.
Communicate main idea or lesson learned.
That is very important. But remember, never say, so, if you want to be happy, you have to do this and that and that. It has to end well, not contrived. You shouldn't force it. Indeed, when we tell a story, it is extremely important that we have to have strong characters. And that makes me think of literature. In literature, we very often look at a protagonist, the good character,
Yes.
and an antagonist, the bad character. And in a story, any good story with conflict, we need both. We need the bad character or the negative character to challenge the good character. So, to show the good character's characteristics, to show that they actually win in the end. So, they are the heroes. Indeed, that is extremely important. You cannot, when you write a narrative essay, use the words and then, and then, and then. You have to be creative. Later on, we will refer to different sentence types and how you address it. And of course, in a narrative sentence, essay, you don't necessarily have to report everything. You can allow your characters to speak for themselves. In other words, use direct speech. And that is something that you learned in language.
Yes.
So, do you see how you use different aspects of what you learn in English First Edition of Language to actually come together and create something new? What about um, a descriptive essay, Sepati?
Yes, let's have a look at that. But do you know what? I love narrative essays because life is about stories. We all make stories every day of our lives.
For sure.
So I love that. But let's go on to the descriptive one and see what is it all about.
We use our five senses: our sense of touch, our sense of taste, our sense of sound, sight, and smell. So instead of telling them, we show them with our words. In other words, we use our senses, what we experience. But we don't have to force all our five senses all at once. We
Yes.
can use and choose to make it more effective. For example, the sky is a bright shade of blue, and white clouds seem to float in it. It is descriptive. It tells me that the sky is blue. It tells me that there are clouds and they are floating. That is a nice descriptive word. Oh, the word nice is not so nice though. Right, but rather than telling, let's show. Because remember, when you write a descriptive essay, you create pictures with words. The white clouds float across the cobalt blue sky. So not only are we referring to clouds, we refer to puffy clouds. And very often, puffy clouds bring a message of rain.
Yes.
Which could be an idea of relief from extreme heat or extreme drought.
Yes.
And then cobalt blue refers to an intense blue. And we often find a cobalt blue sky on the coldest winter days. It's really interesting, isn't it? But we are creating a picture with those specific words. And what do they usually refer to? They refer to figures of speech that are used in original ways. Yet again, we don't force it. There's no rule that says you have to have two figures of speech. If that specific piece of writing lends itself to figures of speech, that is what you use. But it makes it more descriptive and engaging for the reader. You write about something you know something about. If you don't, you have nothing to write about. And that's usually when an essay reaches a wall and you can't get past it. We also use adjectives and adverbs. Where have we heard of that? Adjectives and adverbs. In language, of course. Adjectives refers to words describing nouns in a sentence. For example, puffy and white are both words that describe the clouds. Right. So puffy and white are adjectives. Adverbs, on the other hand, indicate uh, how actions are carried out. So running fast, moving slow, slowly, fast, those are all adverbs. And adverbs very often has an ly at the end,
Yes.
isn't it? Not always, but very often. So if you are in doubt, you ask, what is this word doing in the sentence? It is describing the verb or the action in a sentence.
And remember, that is also written in the present tense
Or the past
or
tense.
the past tense.
Indeed. The next one is the argumentative essay.
Wow. Don't we all love arguing?
I don't.
And you want me to believe that?
Yes, you should.
Okay.
But if you argue something, you should take a stand.
Exactly. And I know our grade 12 learners, they love arguing with their teacher.
Oh, for sure.
And I wonder, how do they carry out the argument? Do they take a stand and support whatever stand that they would have taken?
Indeed.
That is what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what does that mean? It means that in an argumentative essay, you need to take a stand. Begin by stating your opinion of the topic. That is the first thing that you need to do. And give reasons to support and substantiate your view and link them in a logical way, e.g., using linking words like because this shows,
However,
therefore,
mm,
end your essay with a strong conclusion that clearly and convincingly states your opinion.
Sepati, I want you to think about that for a moment. Does that remind you of a certain way of answering questions? I'm thinking about the Peel method. Make a point, give an example, explain the example, and link it. Yes, indeed.
An argumentative essay is subjective, and strong opinions are expressed. A variety of rhetorical devices and persuasive techniques should be used.
And you can see that in the vocabulary you
Yes.
choose. The discursive essay, on the other hand, is a little different. How is it different, Sipati?
This one, the discursive essay, presents both sides of the issue based on the topic.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do here? You need to give a balanced account of the views without favoring one view. Give reasons to support each view and link them together by using words such as because, however, so, therefore, etc. You need to be very clear and objective. Let's have a look at the reflective essay.
I love a reflective essay. I love thinking about my life, and I love to think about things that shaped the person who I have become. That would be a reflective essay. It means to look back upon an event or an experience, thus setting the scene. We often use the past tense, except when we talk about how it has influenced us. In other words, when we evaluate the experience. Let's say we went through something terrible, and how has that shaped our us to become the people that we are? And that's what makes reflective essay writing absolutely wonderful, because it becomes personal.
Yes, and I also think this is more practical because as people, we always go through things. We always go through different seasons of life. And at some stage, we are all forced to look back and reflect on whatever season that you went through.
Indeed. And it doesn't matter what happens. Every person has his own point of view. We look at it from a different perspective. We have to use our skills of description. Do you see how some descriptive elements actually run into this type of essay? We explain thoughts and feelings at every stage. We yet again have to try and show and not tell, painting pictures with words, in other words. But we have to maintain a consistent point of view. We can't chop and change direction and thoughts.
Yes.
We need to know where we are going. Otherwise, an essay like this can fall apart easily.
Definitely.
Our focus must be clearly defined and focused on a well-developed incident. We should also provide background information to set the scene, so to speak. If we talk about how we've grown in life, we have to refer to specific events or one specific event or experience that has influenced us to become the people that we are.
Wow.
The pictures. Tell us about that, Sipati.
I love pictures because out of pictures, I'm being given the liberty to talk about anything that I want. I can come up with my own topic, and we don't have a wrong or a right interpretation, do we?
As long as there's a link between what is there and what you are talking about.
And I'm sure you all love pictures. Right, let's see how are we expected to respond to a picture or a visual essay. Remember, there are always questions in the exam that ask you to write an essay based on a picture. The picture would be minimum of 2 and a maximum of 3 questions. Choose only one picture to write about. You don't have to choose 2. So you look at the pictures that would be given and you decide the one that relates to you.
That one that when you look at it, your brain almost bursts with ideas and thoughts. Then that is the right one to choose.
And to be honest, Marina, picture topics often achieve the highest marks in the examination.
There isn't a great likelihood that you could misinterpret the topic because it's your impression of what you see, the visual response.
Exactly. A picture essay can take any form of an essay that we discussed in the above slides. Meaning it can be narrative
or discursive.
It can be reflective
or argumentative.
Exactly. However, there must be a clear link between your essay and the picture that you have chosen. Use your imagination and you can interpret it in any way, figuratively or literally. What do we mean by that?
Literally and figuratively. Let's start with the literally first. When something is literal, it means what you see. For example, if we talk about a storm, that storm would refer to the physical weather, the clouds building up, the wind starting to howl, the rain starting to fall, or the thunder and the lightning striking. But figuratively, it could also mean a storm in your life, an upsetting event, the death of someone close to you, or a move to another province or a different country. That could also cause a storm. Anything that becomes a change could create a storm. That is a figurative interpretation of that specific picture.
Right, let's have a look at structure of a good essay. You need to have an introduction.
Hello, my name is Marina. When you write an essay, you need to introduce me to your topic. As the reader, I want to know what your essay is all about. And I don't want a limp hand. Likewise, I don't want this limp, today I'm going to talk to you about. We want something striking, something that will grab the attention. We refer to it as a hook.
Yes.
that would hook the reader to want to read on.
And then your essay must also have what we call the body.
3, 4, sometimes even 5 ideas organized or arranged into paragraphs.
And lastly, you need to have a conclusion,
Full
a
circle.
full circle. This applies to all types of essays. Remember, choose the topic that you have most ideas about.
Let's take a look at brainstorming and planning. We are going to show you a picture in the following slide. And we want you to write down the words, ideas, thoughts that come to mind when you see this picture. You don't have to describe the picture necessarily, but you can write down words that you see, of things that you see in the picture. That would actually lead you to greater ideas and greater thoughts. Don't worry about it having to be neat. Don't worry that it could be wrong. You write down everything that comes to mind. Remember, you don't have to describe what you see. You need to respond to what comes to mind when you look at it. And you have 5 minutes for this activity. Welcome back. I'm so sorry that we waited a bit with the picture, but at least you got a couple of minutes to look at the picture. And I do hope that thoughts started streaming in and that you have a whole page of different ideas and thoughts and words coming to mind. But Sepati, when you look at this picture, what do you see?
When I look at them, I just think of teamwork.
Aha, when you have to work in groups, that's very often a difficult thing to do. So you can write a discursive essay
Yes.
on the benefits or the downside of teamwork. You can also write an argumentative essay about how teamwork does not develop the individual, and that
Oh.
working as an individual, working on your own, is better than working in groups. When I look at that, Sepati, I actually look at the four boys and I imagine that they are friends. But let's put a little twist in the plot. Imagine this is a picture that one of these boys found 20 years later in a box under his bed. So that might be a memory of his friends when he was in grade 1 or 2 or 3. Imagine that essay, reflective essay, descriptive essay.
Yes.
We can also have a narrative essay about what these four boys are doing and how they came to this point where they had to work together. I can even think of all four of them being orphans, and they are all in the orphanage, and how they had to adapt. So it would tell the story of these four boys who thought they were alone in the world and how they came to be fast friends and indeed family. So you see, grade 12, you can actually look at the picture and look at it from any point of view.
And the fact that they are in school uniform, we can talk about the importance of school uniform.
Of school uniforms,
That
yes.
can be a topic.
We can do an argumentative essay on that.
Yes.
Are
And
school uniforms still necessary?
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But if maybe you are one of those people who remembers Nelson Mandela's quote, you can come up with I never lose. You remember that?
I never lose, I either win or learn.
Yes. That could be your
Topic.
title.
Yes, because it is linked to the picture of the school.
So you have so much to say about that topic. As a learner, I think most of you don't like homework. So you can talk about the hardship of homework
Mm-hmm.
or classwork or activity, whatever that would come to mind. So you go for it.
For sure. Let's just look at the process again. Quickly brainstorm the chosen topic.
Which we have just done.
Mm-hmm. You write down words and ideas that pop up when you think about the topic using a mind map or a flow chart or even just a list of words. It doesn't have to be something specific as long as the process is there. It doesn't have to be neat. It doesn't have to be grammatically correct. In other words, don't worry about spelling at this point. Don't worry about tenses or relevance at this point. You only worry about ideas that you pop onto the paper. The next thing is to look at those ideas and then group them together. Now, I'm a color-coded kind of person. So if I look at my planning phase, my brainstorming phase, I will actually look through all the words and ideas. And let's say one idea is about group work. Then I would take my blue highlighter and highlight all the ideas and all the ideas on the paper that I can group under group work in blue.
Okay.
And then communication, I could do orange. All the ideas about communication, and all the ideas about relationships I could do in red. So in that way, I actually put together my ideas and my thoughts already.
So that will actually form your paragraph.
The paragraphs, because we can talk about the benefits of attending school versus homeschooling.
Yes.
And those would be our ideas. We could talk about the communication that improves, the relationships that you make, and then also that group work can strengthen the outcome at the end. Then you rewrite each group of ideas as a paragraph. And then you create sentences, correcting, using the correct punctuation, figurative language, and appropriate vocabulary. You arrange these paragraphs so that they make sense. In other words, there should be a process, or there should be growth. One idea must develop the next idea, and these ideas form your content. Note that we have now actually worked on content and not introduction. Very often we see that people fall down and they start writing the introduction. It's like introducing someone, but you don't even know what their name is. So when you develop your essay, you work on the content first. You get your ideas together. You group them together.
Yes.
You discard some of them because you're not going to use all of them. And then you organize and arrange those that you have selected to include. And only then can you think about writing an introduction, because you know where you are going. It needs to invite the reader to want to know more. That is the most important thing about the introduction. Usually when I take a book from a shelf and I want to buy it very, very badly, I love books and I love reading. But when I read the first sentence of chapter 1, I already decide, this is a book that I'll finish. This is a book that I don't want to touch. And then I'll put it back. So that introductory sentence or introductory paragraph should hook me to want to read on.
So
it must spark
immediately.
Yes.
Just on seeing that or reading
interest.
that, it must spark interest.
So how would you make it more interesting? By making a solid statement. For example, if we look at that what Nelson Mandela said, the quote, if you never lose, you either win or
you learn. Yes.
If you take that could be your opening statement. And then you need to show in the introduction where you are going to go with this essay. You must vary sentence length. Sometimes a learner writes an essay, a paragraph, one sentence, using the connecting word and or and then. One sentence, one paragraph. You have lost me on line 2. So you must make it interesting. Some sentences are longer, some sentences are shorter, depending on what you want to achieve. A shorter sentence creates tension. He waited. He listened. He held his breath. Rather than he waited and then he listened and then he held his breath. You understand, it creates tension, which means that you are looking forward to what's going to happen next. You use interesting vocabulary to paint a clear picture. The reader should imagine the scene or seeing himself inside the scene. When we use punctuation, we also create meaning. I am so sorry to tell you, but punctuation is not only a full stop and a comma. There are punctuation marks such as question marks, exclamation marks, colons, semicolons, ellipses,
Yes.
although we shouldn't use that too often. And these punctuation marks actually helps to convey atmosphere and tone. Remember, if you keep the reader's interest, good marks will follow.
Exactly. Right. Let's have a look at this introduction. We will just, in a short time, read the whole piece. And thereafter, as I read, you listen attentively. And at the end of it, maybe they will tell us whether they got interested.
Indeed.
Oh, this is just boring.
Oh, so you are the judges now.
Yes. Every man is the architect of his own future. In order to attract greatness in life, we should work like slaves to live like kings. Life needs balance. We should learn to manage our time wisely. Taking things slowly directs and guides us to success. It helps us to think and acknowledge life. Big things in life take time. It encourages every individual to take things slowly and help us to stop comparing ourselves to others. That is our introduction.
So, does this introduction invite us to read on? Well, it interests me, but I don't know about you. But the writer has introduced the topic well. She talks, or he talked about small changes, big steps,
Yeah.
but it also helps us to see the progress that we might see in the essay. Are the sentences varied in length and type? Most definitely. Has the writer used interesting vocabulary?
Yes.
I definitely saw a couple of words that might not be the word that everyone would use. So that creates interest. Can you identify some ideas that could be developed? Now, this should be an option for you and your teacher to help you to work on this activity. We are not going to spend time on that now, but you are more than welcome in the class situation to look at possible changes or adaptations to make this paragraph, the introductory paragraph, even more interesting. We move to the body of the essay. Now, remember, we've already looked at the brainstorming and planning phase. So, strictly speaking, your body is already there. You just need to now put it together and arrange and organize it. The body comprises of the full content of the essay. It must be divided into paragraphs, and that is what we refer to when we refer to the format. Each paragraph must pursue only one specific idea or point or fact to the end. Remember the Peel method?
Yeah.
You make a statement, you give an example, you explain it, and you link it to the next paragraph. You need to choose your words carefully to create interest or paint a picture. Keep the length of sentences in mind. Remember what you want to achieve by what you say. And that will tell you the length of the sentence and obviously your choice of words. Use your punctuation effectively. Avoid repetition. We're using a lot of repetition in this presentation, but that is important to actually establish exactly what we want to do, what makes a good essay. But in an essay, you should try and avoid repetition. It becomes boring. Now, the body of this essay, shall I read it?
Yes, please.
Sepati. The benefits of taking things slowly helps us to mature. It helps us to see things from a different perspective. We become our own competition, which prevents us from comparing ourselves to others. We become more observant and help us to learn from our mistakes. It teaches us patience. We learn to accept that there are things in life that we cannot change. It teaches us to have perseverance. It eliminates the ideology of expecting everything to be handed to us. It helps us to deal with every obstacle we find in our journey of life. So the body, tell us more about that, Sipati.
I'm sure all of you have been listening to that paragraph that Marina read, which forms part of the body of the essay. The body comprises the full content of the essay. It must be divided into paragraphs. We cannot have one long paragraph. So it has to be divided into paragraphs. And each paragraph must only pursue one specific idea. Like Marina said earlier, you've got to choose your words carefully to create interest and paint a picture. Remember, your vocabulary will influence the language, and the language of your essay will then have an effect on the tone of the essay. That is very, very important. Keep the length of sentences in mind. Long sentences, short sentences, complex sentences, or simple sentences. Use punctuation effectively and avoid repetition. The next lines.
Now it is not doing it. It's not doing it. Right. So if we take a look at the body of the essay, this actually shows us that the writer has identified a couple of ideas in the introductory paragraph. And in the first paragraph already, the writer has touched on a couple of elements that she or he wants to elaborate on.
Yes.
And that gives us a good idea of how she develops and there's progression in the essay that will make me as the reader want to read on. The person has made very profound statements and actually used a number of words that are difficult. A word such as perseverance.
Yes.
What does that mean again?
That is what the writer used.
Yes. So perseverance means to keep going on. You don't give up easily. Even if there are obstacles in the way, you need to keep going. The last part of the essay reads as follows. The disadvantage of rushing things and comparing ourselves to others is that we become discouraged. We have to compete with ourselves to attract greatness. Comparison is the thief of joy. Figure of speech.
Yes.
We lose confidence. We doubt our potential. Rushing things cause us to make mistakes that we cannot fix, and we end up not achieving our goals. The pressure builds up, and this creates anxiety.
Right. Wasn't that a good paragraph?
Indeed.
And are you able to establish a link between the first paragraph of our body and the second paragraph of the body?
What I heard was the first paragraph was a lot more positive. It actually discussed the advantages
Yes.
of not comparing yourself to others or taking your time to achieve your goals. While the second paragraph looked at the disadvantages and what would happen if you don't compete against yourself, or if you take things slowly, one step at a time. You don't want to become an instant millionaire. It's better to work to become one. That's our dream, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So there's coherence of ideas.
Yes.
And the way paragraphs are being organized.
Mm-hmm.
There's a clear link between our introduction, the first paragraph of the body, as well as the second paragraph of the body. Let's come to the conclusion, Marina.
Mm-hmm.
The conclusion is the ending. That is the rounding off of the presentation. You've got to write a strong, creative conclusion.
Sipati, I always think of a lovely sandwich when I think about a good essay. You know, you need 2 slices of really fresh bread.
Yes.
If it's still too warm, then it'll fall apart. So we need solid two solid slices of bread. And then we need all the nice inside things, whatever takes your fancy. I love bovril and butter on fresh white bread. I also love peanut butter and syrup. But you know what happens to a peanut butter and syrup sandwich? What happens to it?
I don't know.
It becomes soggy because if you put it in your stuffing and take it to school, when you take it out at break, it's like the juices went down and the bottom of your sandwich falls apart when you take it out of your school box, your lunch box.
I'm happy I don't eat peanut butter.
So, but I want you to think about that, speaking of pictures, when you write your conclusion, because your conclusion should be just as strong as your introduction. It must be creative, it must be strong, and it must bring your ideas full circle.
Exactly.
There are just a couple of things that you should not do. What are they?
Let's have a look at those. As this is the end, you've got to be very careful not to do the following. You don't have to bring any new information or idea in your conclusion. You also don't have to give a moral lesson. Neither do you have to force an end.
What is that all about? That is like saying, and I woke up. It was all a dream. It's so tiring.
So let's read the conclusion of this essay. You listen attentively and you make your judgment. We must take small steps in life. It leads us in the direction of our purpose in life. Each achievement boosts our mental health and stimulates our inner peace. We should accept that everything has its own pace. We see things from a different angle. It is important to respect God's timing and invite Him into every challenge we face.
Profound words indeed. Well done. Now we move to the proofreading and editing. When we revise, edit, and proofread, we do the following.
Yes, the first thing that you need to do, you've got to check your spelling.
Second,
punctuation and your grammar as well.
I jumped the gun. I'm sorry.
Secondly, does every paragraph contain one main idea? You've got to check that as well. Is the format correct? Do you have an introduction? Do you have a body? Do you have a conclusion? Check that the length is correct. Remember the grade 12s, you are expected to adhere to the required length in this case, which is 250 words to 300 words.
Grade 11 is 200 to 250. While the grade 10s is 150 to 200.
Exactly. Remember that it is important to adhere to the required length. If you don't, you will be penalized for that. Check if there is an introduction. Check that you have expanded the ideas in the body. Check that there is a conclusion as well. Now, let's have a look at
everything that we talked about.
If you want to talk about a successful writing, what does that entail?
Number one, your choice of topic. You read the topics and you select the one you might want to write about. Remember, what do you need? You need prior knowledge. In other words, you need to know something about that topic. And I want to make a suggestion here. If you take geography as a subject, and one of the topics lends itself to discussing pollution or natural disasters, for example, you can use the knowledge that you got from the other subjects and incorporate that into your essay. Just imagine how the strengthening happens there, and it will make a lot more sense than you trying to just get the number of words done. Or if you are a business studies student, you might want to incorporate that. Or even if you take dramatic arts as a subject, use the knowledge that you've gained throughout the 3 years of dramatic studies and use it in your final essay. You need to use things from around you and incorporate that, because that is your prior knowledge, of course. And then also vocabulary. Now, when you see a topic, you need to underline the keywords to ensure you do not deviate from the topic. Often it happens that a learner chooses a topic and thinks, oh, this is the one that I want to write about. And then halfway through, 30 minutes into writing the essay, they reach a wall. And that becomes a problem because you can't start over again. So now you have to go past that hurdle. So that is very often a problem. So make sure that you break up the question and you know what the question is all about. Then you can ask questions. Who is involved? What is happening? When is it happening? Where is it happening? And how? Let's analyze a couple of words and phrases in the topic.
Remember what Marina said. You need to underline the keywords. So let's have a look at the keywords and phrases in the following topics. This is my journey. That is a specific journey we're talking about here. We're not talking about a number of journeys. We're talking about this specific journey. My, which is personal. So it's not about your brother. It is not even your parents' journey or your friend's journey for that matter. It is your journey, which makes it personal. Yes. Then we've got journey. Then we talk about the literal journey or the figurative journey. So it can either be literally or it can be figuratively.
And remember, we talked about that earlier in the presentation.
However, this topic can take any type of an essay. It can be narrative. Storytellers, there you go.
It can be reflective.
Exactly.
Thinking about a journey.
Or descriptive.
One thing that we just need to emphasize here, very often a topic like this one could be misinterpreted in the following way. The learner writes about the journey on the way to the beach, but skips the journey and get to the beach. In other words, the holiday. This topic is not about the holiday or the holiday destination. It is about the journey on the way there. So that needs to be interesting. Let's take a look at the gathering storm. Gathering.
Not yet arrived.
In other words, you can't write about the storm that passed. It is a storm that is still coming. Storm could also be interpreted literally or figuratively. And of course, you can write a narrative, reflective, descriptive essay on this.
Yes. Caring for the environment is everyone's responsibility. That is another topic that you can be given. But then, if you have to analyze the keywords, do you all know what do we mean by the word environment? If you don't know what that word means, you don't have to go for it.
You can't.
So what does environment mean? And then we've got everyone, which means every person. We're not talking about one person here, but it's everyone.
And this would lend itself to a very good argumentative or discursive essay, where you state facts and you bring it back and you explain why you say that. Give examples of what is happening in your community, in your society, in our country, in the world. Depending on your pre-knowledge or prior knowledge, you can actually go anywhere with this topic.
But it can also be narrative.
It can also be narrative,
and
indeed.
Reflective as well.
For sure.
Yes. So you need to take note of the following. you've got to take note of the register. This is an essay. It's a formal piece. Therefore, the register is formal.
That means no contractions such as won't, can't, isn't, ain't. Right. By the way, ain't is not a word. It isn't or aren't.
Yes.
Do not use language that you would use in short cell phone messages. Very nice tongue twister, that one. Such as on WhatsApp or Snapchat. Do not use slang.
Yes.
I'm gonna, I wanna, and bro. And last but not least, this is extremely important. Remember, there are going to be people who are going to mark your essays. And you can't use swear words, not when you speak, and definitely not when you write. So, writing and speaking of any kind, swearing is not acceptable and will be severely penalized. That is just a warning for you. So let's summarize the writing process. Number 1, brainstorm and plan your essay. You might not have enough time to write the first draft, so your planning becomes really important.
Yes.
So what's next, Sipati?
You know, you talk of brainstorming and planning your essay. And many times, most learners don't actually brainstorm. They just go straight to the plan.
Indeed.
And that on its own, it would make their essay not so good.
Yes.
It might not be an exceptional piece. It might not be a wow piece. Maybe you can find yourself in the average category because you have not brainstormed, you have not planned your work. So it is very important that you brainstorm and you plan your work as well. Remember what Marina said in relation to maybe giving color to your brainstorming process.
Indeed. And then there's another thing. When we mark papers, and that includes all teachers, we look at the planning, and then there's a perfect planning there. Clouds, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and one cloud, big cloud in the middle.
In the middle, yeah.
With the topic. And then it's very neat. So you look at these 4 clouds, and these represent the planning, every paragraph. That helps nothing. Because very often you write the essay and then you do the planning afterwards. Listen up. Planning is not for your teacher. It is not for brownie points for the teacher. It is for you to plan and organize your thoughts so that the quality of the work that you write, your essay, increases and improves, which means higher marks.
Proofread and edit your work. That is important. We have explained exactly what does proofreading entails and what does editing entails. So by now you should be knowing that what do we mean when we say you've got to proofread and edit your work.
Use your imagination and be creative. You might just surprise yourself.
Exactly. Keep it simple. Do not use vocabulary that seems impressive if you can't use it properly.
Work fast, but neatly.
And clearly as well.
Use a bright blue pen and try and write a little bigger. Small handwriting is very difficult to read.
Keep an eye on time.
Time management in grade 12 is extremely important, especially when you come to your examinations. And then, of course, you learn that skill not in grade 12. You learn it from early on, but specifically from grade 10 onwards.
Indicate the number of words used at the end of your essay. And don't think that you will fool your teacher. You write an essay of 2 to 3 pages, and at the end you say 300 words.
Wow. We count the words.
We literally count the words.
Each and every one.
Exactly.
Now we are at the end of our session, and you have a little homework. Now, I don't regard homework as punishment. I regard homework, so that's why I don't call it homework, I call it a challenge. I want you to use the picture that you brainstormed and planned at the beginning of the session. So you've already done the brainstorming, you've already to some extent done the planning. Now you need to complete the essay using all the tips shared during this session. Keep it safe until the next time we are dealing with the essay, because we are going to look at that. We're going to edit that, and we are going to rewrite masterpieces.
We're actually going to reflect on this picture.
Definitely. One thing that you must always keep in mind, you have to remember to keep on writing, because writing is a skill and not a gift.
So basically what you mean is that practice makes it
perfect. Thank you for watching this lesson. See you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.